Hi everyone, my name is Rebecca, and today I'll be going over the ACT practice test number 2, numbers 1 to 10. Number 1. If a stereotype of Germans is that they are tidy, meticulous, and industrious, does the characterization of Crown in this passage reinforce or weaken the stereotype? This looks like a question about the main passage, so I'm going to skip it for now and move on to number 2. Number 2. It can be reasonably inferred that in relation to the appointment referred to in the third paragraph, lines 13 to 19, the meeting referred to in the first paragraph occurs F. on the same day, G. several days earlier, H. several days later, or J. several years later. So from the question, it looks like we need to read the first paragraph and the third paragraph. So here we go. Joseph Emanuel Crown, owner of the Crown Brewery of Chicago, was a worried man. Worried on several accounts, the most immediate being a civic responsibility he was scheduled to discuss at an emergency meeting this Friday, the 14th of October, a meeting he had requested. Joe Crown seldom revealed inner anxieties, and that was the case as he worked in his office this morning. He was a picture of steadiness, rectitude, prosperity. He wore a fine suit of medium gray enlivened by a dark red four-in-hand tied under a high collar. Since the day was not yet too warm, he kept his coat on. Joe's hair was more silver than white. He washed it daily, keeping it shining. His eyes behind spectacles with silver wire frames were dark brown, rather large, and alert. His mustache and imperial showed careful attention. He had an appointment at 12 for the weekly trim. His hands were small but strong. He wasn't handsome, but he was commanding. So the meeting that the question number 2 refers to is this appointment at 12 for the weekly trim. However, the meeting that paragraph 1 talks about is a meeting that is further away on Friday, so therefore the answer must be H, several days later. The meeting in the third paragraph is earlier than the meeting in the first paragraph. In other words, the meeting in the first paragraph is later than the meeting in the third paragraph. Number 3. The passage's description of Zwick reveals that, compared to Crown, he is A. equally fastidious about meeting a deadline, B. less inclined to embrace new technology, C. less afraid to state his preferences to his superiors, or D. more concerned with the company's public image. So I don't know who Zwick is, and I'm going to go back to the passage to find out. So I stopped at paragraph 3, and I'm going to continue reading from there. 3 principles ruled Joe Crown's business and personal life, of which the most important was order. In German, Ordnung. Without order, organization, some rational plan, you had chaos. The second principle was accuracy. Accuracy was mandatory in brewing, where timing and temperatures were critical. But accuracy was also the keystone of any business that made money instead of losing it. The primary tool for achieving accuracy was mathematics. Joe Crown had a towering belief in the potency of correct information and the absolute authority of numbers which provided it. In Germany, he had learned his numbers before he learned to read. Though a mediocre student in most school subjects, at ciphering he was a prodigy. He could add a column of figures or do calculations in his head with astonishing speed. In Cincinnati, his first stop in America, he'd begged the owner of a Chinese laundry to teach him to use an abacus. One of these ancient counting devices could be found in his office, sitting on a low cabinet within reach. Money measured success. Counting measured money. Questions he asked of his employees often involved numbers. What's the exact temperature? How large is the population in that market? How many barrels did we ship last week? What's the cost per square foot of this expansion? As for his third principle, modernity, he believed that too was crucial in business. Men who said that the old ways were the best ways were fools, doomed to fall behind and fail. Joe was always searching for the newest methods to improve the brewery's product. Output, efficiency, cleanliness. He hadn't hesitated to install expensive pasteurization equipment when he opened his first small brewery in Chicago. He'd been among the first to invest heavily in refrigerated freight cars. He insisted that modern machines be used in the office. From his desk, he could hear the pleasing ratchet sound of a mechanical adding machine. This blended with the clicking keys and pinging bell on the black iron typewriter used for correspondence by his chief clerk, Stefan Zwick. Okay, so here we have our answer. More specifically, the following part will have our answer. Originally, Stefan had resisted Joe's suggestion that he learn to operate a typewriter. Sir, I respectfully decline. A quill pen serves me perfectly. But Stephen, Joe said to him in a friendly but firm way, I'm afraid it doesn't suit me because it makes crowns look old-fashioned. However, I'll respect your feelings. Please place a help wanted advertisement. We'll hire one of those young women who specialize in using the machines. I believe they too are called typewriters. Zwick blanched. A woman in my office? I'm sorry, Stefan, but you leave me no choice if you won't learn to typewrite. Stefan Zwick learned to typewrite. Okay, so it seems that from this passage that Zwick is a very old-fashioned person, but um, decides that he should learn how to use the typewriter. Therefore, the answer for number 3 is B. He is less inclined to embrace new technology. Number 4. The dialogue in line 72 reveals Zwick's F. Indignation over Crown's proposed solution to the problem two men are discussing. G. Panic over having a surprise visitor to his office. H. Excitement over meeting a new employee of Crown Brewery. Or J. Insensitivity to his recently hired female coworker. So because the woman has not been hired yet, answer choice J is not a possible answer. And if we look back at the passage, at line 72, it appears that he is indignant over the proposed solution, and every other answer is incorrect. There is no surprise visitor, and there is no new employee. Therefore, the answer must be F. He is indignant over Crown's proposed solution to the problem two men are discussing. Number 5. At the time described in the passage's opening, what is Crown's most immediate preoccupation? A. Whether he will be on time for his weekly trim. B. Whether to install expensive pasteurization equipment at his brewery. C. Zwick's impertinent behavior. Or D. A civic responsibility. If we look back at the passage, the most immediate thing that we see in the very beginning is that he is worried over a civic responsibility. And so therefore the answer for number 5 must be D. These questions are a little weird because they're not in chronological order, but I think that we've read most of the passage, so we'll be able to answer the questions nonetheless. So number 6, the passage states that Crown was what kind of student? F, exceptionally gifted, especially in ciphering. G, mediocre, except in ciphering. H, successful when he applied himself, otherwise poor. Or J, increasingly successful as he gained the use of counting aids. So very clearly in the passage, in lines 33 to 35, it says that he is a mediocre student, but he's good at ciphering. So therefore the answer for number 6 must be G. He was a mediocre student except in ciphering. Number 7. Based on the passage, which of the following questions will be most characteristic of the kind Crown typically asks employees? A. Was your weekend a most pleasant one? B. Have you had the chance to repair that old typewriter? C. By what figure will our sales increase if we advertise in that publication? Or D. Who among you has a better idea for how we can work well as a team? So according to line 42, questions he asked of his employees often involve numbers. Therefore, the answer to number 7 must be, by what figure will our sales increase if we advertise in that publication? Because it talks about numbers and everything else does not talk about numbers. Number 8. At the time in which the passage is set, which of the following devices are still apparently being used in offices in the United States, even as those same devices are, in Crown's view, becoming increasingly obsolete? F. Typewriters. G. Mechanical adding machines. H. Quill pens. Or J. Abacuses. So according to the passage, Crown is fine with typewriters and mechanical adding machines. He learned how to use an abacus, but according to his employee Zwick uses a quill pen, and therefore, but Crown disagrees. So therefore, the answer must be H. Quill pens are becoming increasingly obsolete in Crown's view. Number 9. The metaphor the author uses to help describe Crown's 3 principles primarily draws upon imagery from what discipline? A. Architecture. B. Business. C. Astronomy. Or D. Education. So it doesn't really talk about architecture or astronomy or education. Mainly what Crown is focused on is business, and so therefore that must be the answer, which is B. Business. And so to go further into the passage, it says that he values order, he values accuracy, and he values modernity. These 3 things are important to him because they help him develop his product and develop his business overall. Therefore, the answer to number 9 must be B, business. Number 10. Which of the following is a detail from the passage that indicates the length of time Crown has been in the brewery business? F. Some outdated refrigerators from when he first opened his business. G. A newly hung cross-stitch phrase framed and placed on his office wall. H. Photographs of annual company picnics decorating his office. Or J. A bell the ringing of which has marked the start of his workday for the last 20 years. So we know that for sure F and J are incorrect because the passage makes no mention of outdated refrigerators or a bell that's ringing. Inside the passage, it does talk about a cross-stitch phrase, but it doesn't talk about how it relates to the length of time he has been in the business. However, H is photographs of annual company picnics decorating his office, and as we can see in the passage, this marks his time in the brewery business. For more clarification, here they are in the passage. At the very end, there's two things, the photographs and the cross-stitch, and only one of them mentions annual brewery picnics, which is the photographs. So now we can go back to number 1, which he skipped because it was an overall passage question, but here we go. If a stereotype of Germans is that they are tidy, meticulous, and industrious, does the characterization of Crown in this passage reinforce or weaken the stereotype? A. It firmly reinforces the stereotype. B. It initially reinforces and subsequently weakens the stereotype. C. It reinforces the meticulous aspect of the stereotype but weakens the industrious aspect. Or D. It weakens the stereotype in that Crown likes his surroundings tidy but expects others to do the tidying up. So we know that A is pretty much correct, but let's look at B, C, and D to make sure they're actually incorrect before we say that A is correct. So B is incorrect because the passage does not subsequently weaken the stereotype. C is incorrect because it does not weaken the industrious aspect. And D is incorrect because the passage makes no mention specifically of how Crown expects others to do the tidying up. Therefore, the answer must be A. It firmly reinforces the stereotype. So here are some final tips. One is make sure to note when an answer choice is irrelevant. Also make sure that you can skip the main idea or overall passage questions, but make sure you go back to them at the very end. Thank you.